In this video, I will be spending 100 days doing an Ark Nuzlocke. For this Nuzlocke, I will be making it so I can only tame dinosaurs with certain types of food. Once I have used this food, I can't use this food item again. I can also not tame creatures passively, tame baby dinosaurs, or use cook variants of foods. The foods I will be using are fish meat, prime fish, raw meat, prime meat, kibble, berries, and crops. I will also be setting my day cycle speed to 6, making it so I have much less time to complete this challenge. And after spawning in on the north side of the map, I got some materials, crafted a pickaxe. With the pickaxe, got some materials and crafted some more tools like a spear. With the spear, I decided to try and kill this dillo, which even though I jumped, it still hit me with its spit, but I was able to throw a spear and kill it. But its friend came when I was already spit by the other dillo, so I was very low on health, and I couldn't run properly. And after trying to fight it, it spat on me, and even though I was able to kill it, it killed me, with its spit slowly killing me. When I got back, I was able to loot my body and get my tools back. Then I set up a box on the beach to hold my stuff, as it was getting heavy to run around with all these materials. And then I went out and killed some dinosaurs for some hide, starting off with this parasaur, which I bowled and then shot with a bow. And then for some reason, I decided to kill a trike. So I started shooting it with my bow and doing circles around it, but it was able to kill me, obviously. When I got back, I could loot my body once again, getting my stuff. And I went back to killing smaller dinosaurs, like dodos, instead of trikes. An easier challenge, but still getting hide. And I also farmed the wood to craft a raft, which I placed down in the water just near my box. And after putting the box on the boat with all the stuff, I drove over to Herbivore Island to get a nice start where I could farm metal, which I crafted a forge and then placed it down on my raft, as this would be my home for a bit. And I started smelting some metal that I was getting from these river rocks. And with that metal, I could craft a smithy, and in the smithy, I could craft myself a metal pickaxe. With this pickaxe, I went up the island to collect some metal, which I would be able to use to craft some metal tools, like a crossbow. And then I started farming the resources to craft a base on this raft, as I wanted it to be my home for a while. So I started crafting this box, and I had this little area where I could crawl under the raft to get in and out of the base, which is pretty cool. And before leaving Herbivore Island, I got some more metal and then started setting up a trap on my raft for my first tame that I was going to tame very soon. And then before leaving, I farmed up a bunch of narco berries to craft some trank arrows, and then I started leaving Herbivore Island. But before I went up north to Carnivore Island, I made sure to collect some crystal in Lava Cave, so I would be able to craft a spyglass to look at the levels of dinosaurs. And then I made it to the shores of Carnivore Island, where I would look for my first creature. And when I was looking, I made sure to kill all of the scorpions, as I needed chitin for items like the saddle for the creature I will be taming first. And when I was moving my raft to another side of the island, I found an alpha megalodon, which I decided I could try and shoot and kill with my crossbow to get a better crossbow and tools from it. And after shooting this thing for a long time, it got kind of stuck in the shore between my raft, and I was able to start hitting it with my axe, and it eventually died, giving me a crossbow and tools. A very nice kill, worth it in the long run. And then I harvested it. And when I was looking around, I found a low-ish level Argentavis. It wasn't a great level, but it was the best one that I could find on the island. So I ran up to it, got its aggro, and then brought it over to my raft, where I set up that trap for it, that I lured it in, and then placed the walls behind it, trapping it. Well, I tried to, but I missed this time. But I was still able to get a wall behind it, trapping it in place. So all I had left to do now was start shooting trank arrows into it until it knocked out. When it was knocked out, for this creature, I was going to use fish meat to tame it. The worst type of meat that I have for an Argentavis. And when I was taming, I started collecting more chitin for the saddle I would need. And I also collected this supply drop that has some nice shotguns, which would be nice for protection. But when I was running around the island waiting, I found a higher level Argentavis. So I killed the one that was in the trap and brought this higher level one over, where I was able to get it secured into the trap, and then I was able to start knocking it out making it mine, but I was low on health from it when I was bringing it into the trap, so I had to stand in my raft just to be safe, as I did not want to die, as I didn't have a bed on my raft to respawn on it. But eventually by morning, the Argentavis had knocked out, and I was still going to use fish meat to tame. It was in the rules, as I didn't tame the old Argentavis, I just started to. And after waiting for some time, the Argentavis tamed right as I was making its saddle. So I went over to it and named it Midnight, as it had a very nice black color. And then I gave it the saddle and crafted myself some flak armor to keep myself more safe. And then I started flying around with my Argentavis, grabbing an explorer note and killing some Rexes to give it some levels. And I got it with a good amount of weight and stamina. And then I started leaving Carnivore Island towards the mainland, as I got what I wanted from the island. And I also gathered a heap of narco berries to craft even more narcotics to put into trank arrows, which I crafted when I was flying off to tame another creature, where I found a 145 mammoth in the snow after some searching. So I went up to it and started trying to kill its friends so it would be alone and easier to tame. But when I was killing its friends, I realized just how low my Argentavis was right before it died. It's lucky I realized, as it would completely screw over this Nuzlocke if I lost a tame. But after killing its friend, just here, it was alone, and I would now be able to try and trap it. But before that, I had to set down some campfires, as I was very low as I was freezing to death in my armor. And I set up a trap, and I got it in the trap by placing a bear trap in the middle to lock it in place, and then I put gates around it to secure it. But before starting to knock it out, I set up some campfires just near it, where I could shoot it when being with the warmth by the fires. And eventually, I was able to knock it out, and I fed it some berries. Whilst it was taming, I got some items like crystal and oil to craft a cryopod, and I also killed a penguin to get some organic polymer, and I was able to craft a cryopod, so I'd easily be able to get it back to base. When I was flying back to it is when it tamed, so I was able to cryopod it, and I would be able to bring it back to my base, making it much easier to get berries. And I also grabbed this nice drop, giving me some good boots upgrade. And then when I got back, I crafted a mammoth saddle, and I started putting all of the items I had in my Argentavis, as I was going to move base locations. And when I was flying around, I decided to settle up on this rock, down on the south side of the map that I just showed on the map. It would be a nice spot, as it's in an easy area, where I wouldn't have to worry about too many creatures. So I threw out the mammoth, put its saddle on, and then I started hitting all of the trees and bushes to clear the area, so I would be able to set up a base. And then, by hand, I had to start cutting all the rocks to make the base area more flat. And I also named the mammoth Manny. And then I got to crafting some foundations, placing them, and then after placing some foundations and walls, this was the structure I was going for the base. It was a pretty simple box type, but it would be nice. All that I would need for a base. And I started setting up some ramps to give it some more texture on the roof, as my last base in the last 100 days was horrible. But then after setting the base up, I got to placing down all of the essentials I would need to make this place a home, and also crafting a preserving bin and feeding trough. And I also got some irrigation around my base, so I would have a water tap up near my base, so I wouldn't have to come down just to get water. And by placing these water tanks, I was able to link the water up to the top where I could drink from this tap. And then I flew out and I managed to find a max level Rex. I don't know how. It's the first Rex I saw, but I had to tame it. So I got to crafting some trap materials, grabbing the gates and crafting a bear trap, and then crafting some more trank arrows, as this thing would require a heap. So I flew down to it, where I set up a trap, and once I got it in the trap, I placed a bear trap where I thought it stepped into it, and I placed the gates around it, but it just walked out of the trap. I don't know how, but I got it into another trap, and it didn't even set off the bear trap, so I was able to pick that up. And then I just had to start knocking it out, which would take a very long time, and when it got super low on health, I fed it a dinosaur, healing it, allowing me to safely keep on shooting it and knock it out by the time it was nigh. And for this creature, I decided to go out and kill a Therizino to get some prime meat, as I wanted this 150 to be as good as possible since it was max level. And once it tamed, I was able to cryopod it, bring it back to my base, and crafted a saddle. And with this saddle, I went ahead and rode a Rex for my first time in Ark Survival Ascended, and I had to go ahead and just roar on the Rex, as I hadn't done it yet on Ark Ascended. And then, I named it Sue. I'm not very sure why, it just came to mind. And then, I farmed some more materials, where I craft a behemoth gateway and a gate, which I was able to place down in front of my base, keeping my tames and myself safer from any dinosaurs. And then, I went up to the volcano to gather some crystal, as I wanted to set up some greenhouse structures. But I realized I would need some more cementing paste if I wanted to craft them. But I also saw an alpha raptor just down near my base, so I got Sue down to it, where I was able to kill the alpha raptor with ease, as Sue was a very strong T-Rex, and this gave her even more levels, making her even stronger. Then I went back to Carnivore Island to kill some scorpions, to get some more chitin, which I could use to craft some cementing paste for greenhouse structures. So I started crafting some, and then I could craft some greenhouse structures. Not the amount that I would need, but a start. So I started placing them down. And then I got to placing some spike walls around my base to keep it more safe from any dinosaurs that decided to come. And I was able to finish the wall pretty quickly, as I had a lot of resources. And then I started crafting some of these large crop plots for my greenhouse. And then I did a metal run on Redwoods Mountain, and on my way back from the trip, I spotted an alpha T-Rex right near my base. And it had a baby icon, which was weird. It must have just had a bug when it spawned in. But I also realized that it was 2 alpha Rexes next to each other, not just one. So there was a pretty big threat right near my base. But I was able to put the metal away and start smelting it. And I also got the supply drop, giving me a mammoth saddle, which would be a nice upgrade for Manny. And I also crafted some more greenhouse structures, allowing me to finish off the greenhouse, giving my crops more greenhouse percentage, making them grow faster. And then, with Sue, I went over to kill the Alpha Rex, and by now, they were split up from each other, making it much easier to kill them, which I was able to kill. And after killing its friend, I was able to harvest them both for their hide and meat, and then I was able to level up Sue, and it gave her so many levels, and I was able to get a lot of melee on this T-Rex. And as a celebration of killing it, I drank a beer that I got from a supply drop. I'm not sure why, but I also grabbed this supply drop, which has some decent loot, but I had a pretty bad hangover from the beer. But when I was flying around, I spotted its friend, the minimum level Alpha Rex, so I got Sue back out and went to kill it, which was easy with this Rex, as it was a minimum level. But after I'd killed it and harvested it, I realized it didn't even give Sue a single level, as it was a super low level Rex, and Sue was a super high level. And then with some metal structures I'd got from supply drops, I started to demolish them, giving me some metal and cementing paste. And then I started crafting some dyes, and I started painting. This was going to be a masterpiece. This was going to be an artwork. It looked like something that a 6-year-old had painted. It looked horrible. I would not want this anywhere in my house. It looked ass. But then, I crafted some more paint, as I wanted to try again and make a painting that was a bit better. So I crafted this night sky, and it still looked pretty bad, but there was some improvement. And I was able to finish it by painting a bunch of dots, which were like the stars, and then there was a big moon on the side. It still didn't look great, but there definitely was some improvement from this one. And then I wanted to make my base look a bit better, so I crafted some tables and chairs, as I wanted to make a type of long table. So I got to crafting a bunch of tables and placing them down in a long row. And then I placed down some chairs on the sides, and I think it looked alright. It added some more to my base than just a box and some paintings on the side. And I also crafted some wall torches, which I placed, and they looked nice, but they were killing my frames, so I wouldn't have them on very often. And I also crafted a head mount, where I placed the Alpha T-Rex's skull on it, and it actually looked pretty nice. And then with Manny, I went out to kill an Alpha Carno that I had spotted before. And it was pretty easy to kill, as Manny had that stronger saddle, but also because of the knockback, as the Alpha Carno could barely hit him, as we just kept knocking him back. And this gave him a good amount of levels. And then I went up to Redwoods Mountain to do another metal run, where I spotted a Megatherium that was a high level, and I decided it would be a good idea to tame it. So I got its aggro, and I started trying to get it into a trap, but it was annoying as it kept hitting me and it was breaking my armor. But I was eventually able to get it into the trap, and for some reason, I thought that this would be good enough to trap it, some gates. Well, when I placed them, I had a look and I realized this thing would easily be able to walk out of them. It's much smaller than the actual gates, and when it got out of the bear trap, it was free. So I quickly ran back to midnight, where I flew back to my base and came back with some metal billboards, where I placed them down, and then after I got a few placed down, I got the Megatherium aggroed to me and got it in the trap. But now we had an issue. I was stuck in the trap with it, and it was hitting my Archie, but I was able to get out right before my Archentavis had died. And then I just had to do the slow process of knocking it out, which I knocked it out pretty quickly. So I went over to it and collected my metal billboards, and for this tame, I was going to use crops, which I had been growing. So I went back to my base, went back to the redwoods, and fed them to it, and it was taming pretty quickly. And it tamed with the crops in a short amount of time, and I just named it Ginger due to its color. And then I flew to the snow, where I collected some oil, crafted a fabricator, and I could craft a canteen, giving me a better water compared to the water bottle, as it was much lighter and could hold more water. And I also crafted some scuba gear to go into the swamp cave with Ginger, as he would be very strong in this cave. And another positive of being in this cave was the amount of levels my Megatherium got from killing all the bugs. I was able to level it, which was great, as I didn't have to kill alphas. And in the cave, I managed to collect a supply drop, and I also had to get leeches off of my Megatherium, but it was a good thing that leeches were in this cave, as it was the only way I could get silica pearls, besides supply drops. And I did the trick I used in my last 100 days of logging out and in the swamp cave to respawn this supply drop in the cave towards the end of it, and it is guaranteed to be a red drop, and it will always respawn as long as you go far enough away, log out, and then log back in. And after doing it for a long time, this was all the loot that I got from the cave. I stayed just long enough until I got a nice Rex Settle blueprint, which you could see. And I also started to try and get the materials to craft some kibble, which I went around and grabbed some of the ingredients for, and I was able to craft up some exceptional kibble. And from a supply drop, I was able to get my Argentavis a better saddle, which was nice. And when I was flying out, I killed a heap of Spinos, until eventually, I spotted a high-level Spino. And after seeing it, I set up a trap on the beach that I would lure it into, which trapped it in place. And I also got a very good crossbow from the swamp cave, which I was using. And when the Spino got low, I just fed it a dinosaur, healing it, allowing me to knock it out without having to worry about it dying. And when it was knocking out, I remembered to collect a beaver dam for that sweet, sweet cementing paste. And once the Spino tamed, I went ahead and just named it Blackout. And when I brought it back to my base, I crafted a Spino saddle, so I could actually ride on the Spinosaur. And with the saddle, I went out to kill some Alpha Raptors to get some levels, as I wanted this Spino to be very strong. And I also started killing everything that I possibly could. And then, after killing stuff, I went into the lava cave with my Megatherium to kill bugs and retrieve the artifact. And I had to do some scary jumps like this, that weren't really jumps, but I just had to get enough momentum to run across. And when I got towards the end of the cave, I had to do some parkour across to actually retrieve the artifact. And after doing the jumps there, I was successful, and I grabbed the artifact. And then on the jumps back, I also managed to make them without falling into the lava, allowing me to easily get out of the lava cave. And once I did, I was able to throw out my Argentavis and fly back to my base. And I also went to Redwoods Mountain again to get some more metal for that Rex saddle I would need, and I got a lot of metal with the new pickaxes I got. And I also started constructing a type of barn for my big dinosaurs, as I wanted their space to look nicer than just standing around the base. And I was able to start doing the roof, and when I was done the roof, it looked a bit uneven, but it was good enough. And this is how it looked like. It was decent, and it was big enough to store most of the bigger dinosaurs, like the Rex, Spino, and Mammoth. And with my Spino, I went to Carnivore Island, where I found an alpha T-Rex, where I was able to fight it, bring it into the water for the Spino's Hydro buff, and I was able to kill it. And it gave my Spino a heap of levels. And when I was running around the island, I found another Alpha Rex, but this one was a super low level, and I was able to kill it extremely easily, and it didn't even give my Spino another level. That just shows how high level this thing is. And when I brought it back to my base, I started killing everything, and then I had to heal it, but when I was done killing everything for days, this is how much hide I had. I was killing everything, as I wanted to get all the hide that I would need for that Rex Settle blueprint. And for it, I also needed fiber, so I went out to collect a heap. And when I was flying around, I spotted a high-level allosaur that was in a pack, so I started killing its pack mates, and then I lured it into a trap, where I was able to place the gates on both sides after it got stuck in a bear trap, and I was able to then start knocking it out. With my amazing crossbow I got from the swamp cave. When it was knocked out, I started taming it with some raw meat. And when I was waiting for it to tame, I was flying for UDs, and I found a decent level, a 115. I would want a higher level, but I could settle on it if I find nothing. And when I got back to my allo, it had tamed. So after going back to my base and getting a saddle I got from the swamp cave and putting it on, I went and started killing an Alpha Carno to give it some levels, which I was able to do pretty easily, with the allo saddle being super overpowered. And then I went to the center cave to retrieve another artifact with my Megatherium. But in this cave, I was able to mostly just run past all the enemies, as they didn't normally aggro to my Megatherium, making this cave super easy. But when I got to the end, I had to dismount, making every nearby creature aggro onto me, so I had to fight everything. And then I was able to get out of the cave, where I was able to throw out my Argentavis and fly back to my base. And after depositing the artifact, I went to the other cave to get the last artifact that I would need to fight the boss, the Broodmother, which was my goal for these 100 days. And when I got to this section where my Megatherium couldn't fit through, I had to start shooting all the enemies with my shotgun that I got from the swamp cave. And when I thought I killed everything, I went to retrieve the artifact when a spider came to surprise attack me, but I was able to shoot it with my shotgun. And after searching for Uteranus for a long time, I couldn't find any high levels, so I settled for the 115, which after failing to trap it, I was able to successfully trap it. And when I was trying to get out of the trap, it almost got out, but I managed to slip out of the gate, making it so I was able to knock it out, which is obviously what I started doing, which did not take long at all to knock out, as I had this insanely good crossbow that had hundreds of damage percent. And for this creature, I had to fly to the middle river to collect some raw prime fish meat from some saber-toothed salmon, and after feeding it to the Yudi, it had tamed, and I just didn't think of a good name, so I just named it Agent Feathers. It was all I could think of. So after bringing it back to my base, I killed some Alpha Raptors that I had spotted to give it some levels, so it would hopefully be good enough to fight the Broodmother. And after killing the Alpha Raptors, it gave my Yudi enough levels that I was happy with. I was able to get it to 50,000 health and a good amount of stamina. As you can see here, this was me leveling it, and it got a lot of health points, which was good, as I would be riding on the Yudi, so I would need it to be very strong. And then I had to spend a lot of time healing it, as it was very low after leveling it, which after healing it, I started cryopotting all of my tames to start just getting them ready, and then I had to sit around my base for a long time, waiting for metal to smelt to craft the insane Rex saddle, which I did. It took a long time of just waiting for the metal to smelt. And then I also grabbed some gear out of this box that I had been saving. And then I brought everyone over to the obelisk, giving them all some food and items that they could use for the boss fight. And when I was ready, I started the Gamma Broodmother fight, hoping that we would be able to win. After teleporting in, I courage roared all of my dinosaurs, so they would be stronger. My team of 6 would hopefully have to be enough. So after courage roaring all of them, I sent them in. But instantly into the fight, they were stacking on top of each other, making some of them not being able to hit the boss. So I got them to start going around the boss, and they were all able to hit the broodmother. And I did my part in this fight by trying to shoot the broodmother to get her health lower, which I was doing. Everything was going good. We were doing a lot of damage to her, and she was doing a small amount to us. And I was shooting this thing with pretty much every gun I had, even my shotgun, which was insanely good. And it didn't take too long for my team to kill the Gamma Broodmother. But it just felt easy. It didn't feel like that much of a challenge. But I still went ahead and grabbed the element and trophy out of the crate. And I checked everyone's health, and pretty much everyone was fine. The only ones that weren't doing that great were the Allosaur and Sue, but they were the ones taking the hits from most of the spiders and the broodmother. So everyone was doing pretty good. And with this, I spawned in the items to attempt the beta fight. I didn't want to grind them, I just wanted to see if we would be strong enough to fight it. So, after I got everyone ready by healing them, I started the fight. And this fight was not going as good. It was dealing a lot more damage, which was not good. And its health was going down much slower than the Gamma fight, as it has much more health. And not long into the fight, blackout. The Spino had died, not even halfway in. This was bad. I was losing tames, not even halfway into the fight. So I tried to do my part in the fight with just constantly shooting it. And then sometimes courage roaring my dinosaurs when their courage meter went down. And we were around halfway into the fight. And I was just hoping that we would be strong enough to beat this boss. And I decided to go up close and view everyone's health when Sue was super low, and Sue also died. Even with her insanely good saddle, she still died. And now, I only had some of the weaker dinosaurs left, and they were dying. I lost Chroma, the Allosaur, and that's what I named it. And I used all of the stews that I had gotten from the cave, and used them so I could deal as much damage. And then, I lost Manny. My only creature left was Ginger, the Megatherium, and my Yudi, which I realized was taking a beating from all of these spiders as I was shooting the boss, and they were just eating him slowly and draining his health down. So I just tried to get the Yudi moving, and then Ginger died, and shortly after, the Uteranus died when I was trying to shoot off its back to weaken the broodmother. Now, it was just me on foot versus the broodmother, and it was low on health, so I had some hope in this fight. And I had some medical brews, so I could try and live. And even when it hit me with this cobweb, I had all my potions, so I could still move at a decent speed. And from one of its attacks, it broke all of my armor. So if I took any hits, I would take a lot of damage. So I just continued to run around the arena, shooting the broodmother, hoping that I would be able to kill it. And when continuing to run around with my potions and shooting the broodmother, one of its orbs hit me, killing me. It's not exactly the greatest ending to 100 days, but I had done what I wanted. I'd killed the Gamma boss, and I just pushed my luck a bit too far, seeing if my army could kill the beta. Thank you all for watching. This is my second video, and I just want to say thank you all if you watched the whole way. You listened to my voice for half an hour, so that's something to say there. But anyway, thank you all for watching. Have a good day.